welcome to Season 4, Episode 23 of Pro Wrestling's Top 50. I'm your host, Travis McNeil, and today we continue our countdown of the top 50 matches in Lucha Underground history with match number 28 on our list, which is the title versus career match for the Lucha Underground Championship between the champion Prince Puma and the challenger Drago from the April 29th, 2015 edition of Lucha Underground titled The Way of the Drago. So a lot going on that brought us to this match. Something that we saw a little bit early on in Lucha Underground with Prince Puma's initial title reign was that Lucha Underground wasn't afraid to do face versus face title matches, which felt really refreshing at the time. We've seen that done a little bit more since then, specifically with AEW on a mainstream level. But for televised wrestling at the time, you know, we're primarily used to WWE. Everything's always been kind of face versus heel. It's rare that you would get just that athletic, competitive match, you know, for the sake of competition or a title on the line, right? With that heel versus face dynamic. So that's what we got here. It felt really cool and refreshing. How we got to the match is Drago and Aerostar were engaged in a best-of-5 series for a unique opportunity, which would be something that Dario Cueto would use countless times throughout Lucha Underground to run these unique opportunities, which were normally something that would seem very good on paper, but then would have this added twist that would not be so good, and that's exactly what we got here. So the best-of-5 would, you know, ultimately be for a Lucha Underground Championship shot, with the caveat, though, that to get that title match, you would have to put your career on the line. And that's exactly what we got here. This match, like I said, it's full of athleticism. It's pretty clean cut, two baby faces, and it ramps up in the exact way you would expect a match like this to ramp up. We start with a handshake, which was great. Fast-paced action. Drago hits a tornado to the floor. Prince Puma hits a Fosbury flop. They show that Drago is, you know, fighting for his career, and he has Prince Puma really well scouted. So he blocks the Benadryller, hits like a big kick combo, and gets a good near fall off a Poison Rana for 2. We start to ramp up that aggression as they start to go more into strikes from, you know, the back and forth athleticism. So we get a big strike exchange. Prince Puma gets a good near fall off a Blue Thunder for 2. Drago again counters the Benadryller with a Canadian Destroyer. But here is where things get, you know, a little murky. So again, face versus face, but they want to add some juice into that. And essentially we get not quite a full heel turn yet, but the makings of one, starting with Hot Stuff Hernandez. So Hernandez had recently come into Lucha Underground as an associate with Konnan, of course, going back to their LAX days in TNA. Konnan, you know, was the manager of Prince Puma, so he brought Hernandez in almost as like an insurance policy for the champion. Prince Puma took umbrage to that, you know, not needing it, right? The babyface champion, the face of the company, he doesn't need any help or any backup. And that would start to gradually rub Hernandez the wrong way. And, you know, Hernandez would try to stake his claim to being the Lucha Underground champion. So here we have a moment where, you know, Hernandez comes in and hits the pounce on Drago, almost sort of seeming like he was going for it on Prince Puma. So again, that murky stuff, but he hits it on Drago. Prince Puma, you know, doesn't want to win that way. The referee's knocked out. Drago's laid out. And a great, you know, piece of story where Konnan is at ringside and he's yelling at Prince Puma, you know, no mercy, show no mercy, finish him, put him away. Prince Puma knows what's at stake, Drago's career, but ultimately, you know, he wants to retain his title, so he drops Drago with the Galleria, and it's enough for 3 to effectively end, at that point, the career of Drago in Lucha Underground. Where we would go coming off of this would be quite clever. So this was interesting because it was the first kind of big stipulation like that in Lucha Underground where, you know, when a promotion is new like Lucha Underground was at the time, you kind of put a lot of faith in them to see, are they going to follow through with their stipulations or not? So ultimately they wouldn't. Drago would be brought back. I had no problem with it, as I'm sure most of the audience didn't, because Drago was a popular wrestler. You know, I talked about it that he was my nephew's, you know, favorite wrestler. When he would watch Lucha Underground with me for those first couple of seasons, we bought him a Drago mask and everything like that. So a really cool personality. He would get brought back in a clever way, though. So to determine who would face Prince Puma at Ultima Lucha 1, Dario Cueto basically says that anybody that's competed against Prince Puma for the title and lost would be welcome to compete in a multi-person match to determine the #1 contender. That was Drago's loophole back in. That was the match stipulation. He had lost to Puma. Drago would ultimately end up winning that match, which also involved Hernandez. He would, officially turn heel on Prince Puma and lose in his bid to win the title. Drago would win that multi-man match. This would cause Katrina to, be very upset with Dario Cueto that Mil Muertes, wasn't allowed into that match, and that he should be the rightful #1 contender out of fear for Katrina and Mil Muertes. Mil Muertes, who had recently come back from the dead, he agreed to have Drago put the #1 contendership up against Mil Muertes. Drago would ultimately lose that match because it would be jumped by Hernandez pre-match. Hernandez would whip him with a fan's belt. Hernandez had been starting to get into it with the fans on a weekly basis in his matches, and that would lead to the first ever Believers Backlash match at Ultima Lucha between Drago and Hernandez, and that's a match that we will talk about another time. It completely, over exceeds any expectation it could have on it. This match, though, it's super fun. It's two great baby faces going to war for the title in a match that doesn't overstay its welcome, ramps up the aggression as it goes. Yes, it has a bit of a disputed ending, but it all worked in the grand concept of the story. You can watch this match for free on Lucha Underground's YouTube. If you want to see the whole episode, if you have Tubi, you can find Lucha Underground that way. And depending on where you live, if that's not available, you can Google search and find these episodes quite easily. You can subscribe to my channel here on YouTube so that you don't miss a video. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Wrestling50. And please join me again tomorrow as we continue to count down Pro Wrestling's Top 50. Top 50.